Deep Impact is the film that turned the end of the world into something you could actually feel, not spectacle, grief, sacrifice, and impossible choices. But the version you saw nearly had a different director, a cut line that mocked its biggest rival, and a cinematographer who was secretly dying on set. Here are 16 things you never knew about Deep Impact, 1998. 1. The whole thing started with a memo nobody read for 20 years. Deep Impact did not begin as a screenplay or a pitch meeting. It began in the late 1970s as a 15-page written memo, a treatment sketched out by producers Richard Zanuck and David Brown, the men behind Jaws, The Sting, and Cocoon. They pitched it to Paramount as a remake of the 1951 film When Worlds Collide. Nobody developed it, nobody moved it forward. It sat in a filing cabinet untouched for the better part of 2 decades. Zanuck and Brown later admitted they found it while cleaning out their offices and nearly threw it away. In the mid-1990s, they sent the memo to Steven Spielberg. He read it and reacted strongly. Spielberg had separately purchased the rights to Arthur C. Clarke's 1993 novel, The Hammer of God, which covered almost identical territory. Rather than compete with the memo, he merged both concepts into a single project. 2 decades of neglect and 1 near disposal became one of the biggest disaster films of the 1990s. 2. The cinematographer was dying on set and kept it hidden. Dietrich Lohmann had worked with Mimi Leder on her debut feature, The Peacemaker, and was her first choice for Deep Impact. He was a respected cinematographer with an international career built across decades of serious film work, and he was dying. Lohmann had been diagnosed with leukemia. He did not tell Leder. He did not tell the cast or crew. He came to set and he worked. Leder began noticing inconsistencies, dailies that were uneven, lighting that didn't match what she had asked for. She knew something was wrong but couldn't identify it. He took 2 extended absences during production without explanation. A camera operator quietly filled in when he was gone. Nobody on set knew the truth until it was too late to do anything about it. Lohmann died not long after the film wrapped. Deep Impact was his final credit. The film is dedicated to his memory. In the closing titles, a dedication most audiences read without understanding the full weight of what it was marking. 3. Spielberg was supposed to direct it and pulled out when Armageddon was announced. By the mid-1990s, Spielberg had been actively developing the script with screenwriter Bruce Joel Rubin for over a year and a half. He intended to direct the film himself for DreamWorks. He was involved in casting conversations. He had strong opinions about tone and realism. At one point, pushing for all the astronaut dialogue to be written in actual mathematical equations. Then Touchstone Pictures announced Armageddon, a similarly themed film also targeting the summer of 1998. Spielberg was simultaneously committed to post-production on Amistad and couldn't deliver Deep Impact in time if he stayed as director. He stepped back to executive producer and handed the chair to Mimi Leder. Leder was told she had the job while she was still finishing post-production on The Peacemaker, her debut feature. She was, by most accounts, not yet aware that Armageddon existed. She found out from the press. The campaign to pit the 2 productions against each other began almost immediately and lasted the entire production cycle. 4. The original script had a direct dig at Armageddon, and it had to be cut. Morgan Freeman's President Beck had a line in the finished script that the producers were proud of. In the climactic press conference scene, Beck was supposed to say, "Life will go on, we will prevail. This is not Armageddon." It made it through the entire production. It made it into the edit. Then someone ran the numbers and confirmed that the 2 films were going to open within weeks of each other in the same summer. The line was cut. The version that audiences saw has Beck saying only, "Life will go on, we will prevail." The Armageddon reference is gone, replaced by nothing, because the sentence was complete without it. A deliberate provocation toward a direct competitor written into a major studio blockbuster survived all the way to post-production before being quietly removed. Deep Impact and Armageddon earned a combined $500 million at the box office that summer. The line would have made headlines. Nobody ever got to hear it. 5. The opening car crash death mirrored a real astronomer's death. Almost exactly. In the film, astronomer Marcus Wolf discovers the comet on a collision course with Earth. and is killed in a car accident while racing to warn authorities. It is a jarring, abrupt death. He never gets to tell anyone what he found. That sequence was directly inspired by the real-life death of Eugene Shoemaker, one of the most celebrated planetary scientists in history and co-discoverer of the Shoemaker-Levy 9 comet, which collided with Jupiter in 1994. Shoemaker died on July 18, 1997, in a car crash in the Australian outback while conducting field research. The timing was striking. Shoemaker died while the Deep Impact screenplay was in active development. Yet the car crash death of an astronomer who couldn't get his warning out became part of the film's DNA. Shoemaker had actually served as a science consultant on the project before his death. His wife Carolyn, who co-discovered the Shoemaker-Levy 9 comet with him, continued as a comet advisor on the production after he was gone. 6. The traffic jam was real. 2,100 extras and 1,870 vehicles on an unopened freeway. The sequence where millions of East Coast residents flee the incoming tidal wave, an enormous, miles-long traffic jam at the end of the world, and was filmed on an actual freeway in Manassas, Virginia. The road had been newly completed but had not yet been opened to traffic, which gave the production access to a pristine stretch of highway. Over 2,100 extras were enlisted.
You know, you used to see movies with casts of thousands. Well, this is cars and thousands. It was just great.
More than 1,870 vehicles were staged. Cars, trucks, campers, and boats on trailers spread 8 lanes wide on both sides of the road for over a mile and a half. It was one of the largest crowd sequences filmed in the United States in years. The shoot ran 2 full days in summer heat on blacktop. Refrigerated trucks loaded with food and drinks were hidden inside the jam. Porta potties were camouflaged among the vehicles. Helicopter safety briefings were issued to the crowd. No digital effects were used to extend or populate the scene. Every single car and person visible in the finished film was physically there. The comet overhead and the approaching wave were the only elements added in post. 7. James Horner scored it because he missed Mimi Leder's previous film. James Horner had been approached to score The Peacemaker, Mimi Leder's debut feature. He had to turn it down because he was committed to Titanic, which was running over schedule and consuming his entire working life during that period. When Deep Impact came along, Horner volunteered for it. He wanted to work with Leder and saw the project as a chance to do what he had missed the first time. The resulting score, performed by the Hollywood Studio Symphony for Orchestra, became one of the more emotionally resonant soundtracks of the late 1990s, built around a central theme of quiet grief rather than the bombastic heroism the disaster genre typically demanded. Horner had just come off Titanic, which won the Academy Award for Best Original Score that year. He moved directly from the biggest film of the decade into Deep Impact. The emotional register he had developed for Jack and Rose's story carried directly into the film about the end of the world, a quietness underneath the scale that gave Deep Impact a weight its rival Armageddon never attempted. 8. The comet is the wrong color, and the production knew it. Real comets are among the darkest objects in the solar system. They reflect only about 3% of the light that hits them, far less than asphalt, far less than almost anything else in space. In the darkness of space, a real comet would be nearly invisible against the black background. The Deep Impact production team was aware of this. They consulted astronomers and scientists extensively. The information was not in dispute. They made the comet bright white anyway. The special effects technology of 1998 could not convincingly render a dark object against a dark background in a way that communicated threat, scale, or detail. A scientifically accurate comet would have been invisible on screen. The choice was practical rather than ignorant, and it is one of the more honest admissions in 1990s blockbuster filmmaking. The team knew what a comet actually looked like and made a deliberate decision to get it wrong for the sake of the audience. 9. Morgan Freeman wanted to wear an earring as the president. Morgan Freeman came to the role of President Tom Beck with a specific vision for the character's appearance. He wanted Beck to be wearing an earring, a small personal detail that would suggest something about the man beneath the office, a hint of individuality. Director Mimi Leder said no. The earring did not appear in any scene. The question of what the first black president of the United States should look like on screen was one the production was clearly navigating carefully. Freeman's instinct was to push toward personhood, to make Beck a specific man rather than a symbol. Leader's instinct was to let the performance carry that weight without the accessory doing any of the work. Both positions were defensible. The earring lost. Freeman's performance remained one of the most praised elements of the finished film regardless. A man who carries catastrophic knowledge with a steadiness that makes it more frightening rather than less. 10. The opening DreamWorks logo was altered specifically for the film. DreamWorks had a memorable animated logo, a boy fishing from a crescent moon, the clouds parting around a starlit sky. For Deep Impact, the opening of the logo was modified. As the clouds fade and the stars appear, the moment in the standard logo where the image settles into the familiar image, the stars instead transition directly into space and the words Deep Impact appear filled with a view of Earth from orbit. The logo doesn't end, it becomes the film. It was a deliberately seamless transition. The DreamWorks brand identity dissolving into the film's visual world before the audience had time to register the shift. For audiences in 1998 who were accustomed to logos as a buffer before the film began, the effect was disorienting in the best way. The end of the world started before you expected it to. The studio made itself part of the opening in a way that had rarely been done at that scale. 11. The film set a record for the biggest opening weekend ever by a female director. Deep Impact opened on May 8, 1998 and earned $41 million in its opening weekend, enough to rank it as the 10th highest opening weekend of all time at that point. That number also set a record. It was the biggest opening weekend ever delivered by a female director in the history of Hollywood. Mimi Leder held that record for a decade. It was broken in 2008 when Twilight opened with a larger figure under director Catherine Hardwicke. In 1998, the year Deep Impact was released, only 17 of the top 650 films on Variety's all-time rental chart had been directed by women. Leder acknowledged that number publicly and said that every time a woman directed a major film and it performed, it made the next opportunity more possible for someone else. She had come up directing episodes of ER, then one of the most demanding television productions in America, and brought that discipline and speed directly to a film about the end of the world. 12. The script originally followed dozens of characters and had to be brutally cut. The first draft of the Deep Impact screenplay, developed by Bruce Joel Rubin with Spielberg, ran to an enormous length with a sprawling ensemble of characters whose stories all intersected around the coming impact. It was closer to a 3-hour epic than a commercial blockbuster. Producer David Brown brought in Michael Tolkien, screenwriter of the player, to reduce the draft to something filmable. Tolkien later estimated that the original contained $180 million worth of subplots. He said the challenge was deciding which human beings to follow through the end of the world and letting everyone else go. The strategy that emerged was to funnel every storyline through Jenny Lerner. Every character had to connect to or move through her in some way. The structure forced a coherence that the sprawling original draft couldn't achieve. Tolkien described the core concept differently from what most people assumed the film was about. The disaster, he said, wasn't the comet hitting the ground. The disaster was the announcement. What happens to human beings the moment they are told they're going to die? 13. Real astronomers and NASA veterans were brought in as consultants, including the Shoemakers. The Deep Impact production assembled a genuine science advisory team. Astronomers Gene and Carolyn Shoemaker were credited as comet advisors. Josh Caldwell and Chris Lucchini contributed astronomical expertise. Former astronaut David Walker provided input on space mission logistics and crew dynamics. Jerry Griffin, former director of NASA's Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center, advised on government and mission protocols. ILM's visual effects team held a dedicated think tank session with astronomers and scientists before building a single effect. The goal was to be as scientifically accurate as possible, to understand what comets are made of, how they behave in space, what the physical consequences of an ocean impact would actually be, and what realistic ejecta and debris patterns would look like. The result was a film that scientists and astronomers consistently praised as more accurate than its rival Armageddon. Though both were criticized for significant scientific simplifications, the attention to detail showed up in unexpected places. When Charles Martin Smith's character checks his email in an early scene, Two of the messages in his inbox are from C. Shoemaker, a quiet tribute to Carolyn Shoemaker, built directly into the shot. 14. The first cut had much more of Elijah Wood and Lily Sobieski, and test audiences rejected it. The teenage storyline, Leo Biederman and Sarah Hotchner's relationship, running parallel to the adult ensemble, was significantly more prominent in the film's first assembly cut. Their scenes together were more numerous, more detailed, and occupied more of the film's running time than what ultimately appeared in theaters. The film went to a sneak preview before its release. The audience response to those scenes was poor. Specifically, the teenage subplot felt slow and underweighted compared to the pressure of the main narrative. The relationship didn't have enough room to breathe within the film's structure to justify the time it was taking. The scenes were cut substantially. Wood and Sobieski's presence in the finished film is noticeably more functional than emotional. They serve the plot more than they inhabit their own story. Both actors were praised for what remained of their work, what the first cut looked like. How much more of their arc existed before the test screening has never been shown publicly. The version that changed everything is the only one most people have ever seen. 15. The Messiah spacecraft was built as a 12-foot physical model. ILM built a 12-foot physical model of the Messiah spacecraft for the production. The model was used for reference in specific shots throughout the film's space sequences, a practical anchor point for the team building the digital environments around it. The comet itself was conceived and designed through intensive consultation with the science advisory team. ILM supervisor Scott Farrar said the goal was to give the comet what he called a meaner look, something that communicated danger in a single glance while staying as close to scientific reality as the visual medium allowed. Zanuck reportedly felt the initial designs were too passive in appearance and pushed for something that read as genuinely threatening. 16. The film beat Armageddon on opening weekend but lost the summer. Deep Impact opened 8 weeks before Armageddon. It won the opening weekend battle by a significant margin. Its $41 million debut was larger than Armageddon's opening figure, and it held the record for the biggest opening weekend ever for a female-directed film for a decade afterward. Armageddon won the summer. By the time the season was over, Michael Bay's film had significantly outgrossed Deep Impact overall, earning more than $550 million worldwide compared to Deep Impact's $349 million. Armageddon finished as one of the top-grossing films of 1998. In the years since, the critical and cultural reappraisal has moved consistently in Deep Impact's direction. It is regularly cited by scientists as the more accurate of the two films. It is regularly cited by viewers as the more emotionally devastating. Deep Impact asked a question most disaster films avoid entirely, not how do we stop it, but what do we do if we can't? What would you have done with your last hours? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this one hit different, subscribe. There's a lot more waiting in the films that understood something the blockbusters didn't.